now, and you're in Florida probably, I think, too. Where do you stand right now with the resumption of sports? Let me get your sense of where you think we are here as we head to June. Let me hear.
I think it looks good, Chris. I really do. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. I think, the NBA is determined to get this thing going in Orlando. The NFL has never really wavered as far as their plans for what's going to happen. I think they want to start on time and want to have the games. And, I think hockey has a plan. I think everyone has a plan. And I think the one thing that really I really underscore is the fact that college football, when you consider how college football actually pays the budgets, the college football games and those big conferences pays the budgets for the schools. And I know that it's important for the students to get back for college football to be played, Chris. I think that's all going to happen too. So I'm really, I'm bullish about all of that.
Yeah, I am too. Do you think the NFL? What's your take on this virus possibly returning in November and hurting the NFL? You think Goodell's got plans for that? Gaps in the schedule? Let me hear your take. If the virus,
without really knowing anything specific, Chris, I think, look, things are going to happen. People are going to come down with something. They're going to deal with it. I don't think we're going to see anything close up anymore. I really don't. I mean, this is in the world. I just don't think things are going to close up. Once we've gone through what we've gone through with the quarantine and how tough that's been, I think things opening up, I think they're going to open up there too. The one big question, of course, we all have is about fans and what's going to happen with the fans. I have no clue about that, but I think that they're determined to have the games go on. And if somebody comes down, and has the virus again, I think they're going to have a mechanism to deal with that. I don't think we're in the situation with once they get going again, it's going to be close-up time. I don't think that'll happen.
I agree with that. I think once they restart, they will start. How about you as a broadcaster, Dick, and just overall, doing a ball game in a big stadium without fans? How much of an adjustment is that going to be for the play-by-play guy?
Well, that's a great question that no one has really asked the broadcasters yet. I think that we're going to have to adjust to that. And I think that the key, and we saw a little bit of it with the golf and how well, TNT did and Turner did with the golf last week with that great rating they had with that. And I think that the key will be not to feel that without fans, the broadcaster is going to have to talk a lot more and really make false excitement. I think that's going to be key. I think it's going to be what it is. I have no idea what they want to do as far as piping in crowd noise or any of that kind of thing. I have no feeling about that, or no decision has been made by the network. But I think we just have to do it naturally, and I think the broadcaster, in my case, play-by-play announcer, has to call the game and has to do it in a natural way. He's got to be excited when something important happens, but not go wild. Not go wild because of the situation, because you don't have any crowd, and to falsify it.
Right, you can't overdo it.
You can't overdo it. You just have to do it because I don't think the fan wants that. He knows there are no fans there if that's the case. And you just hold the game away, but it's going to be strange. There's no question about it.
All right, your career, Dick, a fascinating one. Was your big national break, was it the 75 fist home run in Game 6 of the World Series? Is that where the nation got to know who Dick Stockton was?
Yeah, I believe so. And, it was about being in the right place at the right time. And I was just the Red Sox announcer in those days. NBC, which had the contract for the games, would bring along, which I thought was a great idea, a local broadcaster for each team competing in the World Series. And initially, they did the World Series themselves, and then later on, they worked with, in my case, Kurt Gowdy, Joe Garagiola, and Tony Kubek, and Marty Brenneman came along. He was the Cincinnati Reds announcer, just retired last year, great broadcaster. And so by having the local guy in there, he would lend, a certain feel for the team he broadcast for. So that was the situation with me in the 1975 World Series, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time because, this was the 6th game of the World Series, and we had several days of rain, and the Reds were within one game of capturing the series, leading 3-2, of course. And so normally the NBC announcer, like Kirk Gowdy in Game 1 did the first 4.5, and I did the play-by-play for the last 4.5. But for Game 6, they said, we want to have the NBC play-by-play guy. In this case, it was Joe, to finish the broadcast, to have the call in the ninth inning when it was over. So you start doing the first 4.5 innings, which I did. I said, look, whatever you want me to do, I'll do one batter if you want me to. So I did the first 4.5, Chris. He did the last 4.5, and then it went in extra innings. And they said, okay, and I think Chet Simmons, was the sports director of NBC. He says, let's just alternate innings. Nick, you do the 10th. Joe, you do the 11th, and we'll go from there. I happen to be the guy at the mic in the 12th inning when Fisk came up and hit the home run. And you know what, Chris? Today that would never happen. Today, whoever would be doing the World Series on any network, and I know Joe does it for us, they would say, hey, look, buddy, thanks a lot for what you contributed. I'm taking over now. It wouldn't happen today.
But I'll tell you though, Dick, that great call, it's laconic. You did not overplay it. And you're a young broadcaster in 75. Now, I heard you all the time in 75 because I was at Martha's Vineyard all summer. So I watched all those Red Sox games, and so I knew you. But you played that home run perfect. You didn't go crazy, you didn't overdo it. And that's tricky to do that as a young broadcaster, especially one who doesn't work for the network. And you handled that call well. And, that was from a national standpoint, that's one of the greatest calls of all time, and it's one of your first, and you nailed it. So let's talk about that for a sec. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. And all I trained to do, and all I ever wanted to do, was to call it with enthusiasm but restraint. And the key thing is let the moment play. And I always believe, and I know that Vince Scully has done this his entire career with the Dodgers, even dating back to Brooklyn. There is nothing better than the sound of the crowd and the pictures of the different shots that the director puts up there. Nothing can beat that. No screaming, no words can ever match, the sound and the picture.
And you nailed that. Now, you grew up in New York as a big Giant fan, did you, Dick?
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that in the past. I was a New York Giants baseball fan. When they were in the Polo Grounds, broke my heart when they went to San Francisco, in 1958. And just recently, you're going to love this, I got a letter from a guy. I wrote a column. I have a website, dstockton.com, and Stockton says I write a column every week. And I wrote one on Johnny Antonelli, who was a pitcher who the Giants acquired. And I know in 1954,
had a big year.
And, 21-7. They won the World Series with him, and I got to meet him down here in Florida in my early days when I moved to Florida, and I was just thrilled because he played golf at this course here in Boca Raton, and I talked to him then. He passed away, within the last several months. Anyway, I get a letter. And this fan, because I wrote about Johnny Antonelli, he sends me his baseball card that he got, that Antonelli autograph, and he sent it to me, and I know he was a favorite player. That was a really nice of this guy, and a thrill for me.
Oh wow! Now, where were you in May? Were you old enough to know enough about the Mays catch against the Indians in '54?
I was there, Chris.
You were in the ballpark. Oh, I didn't know that, Dick. Tell me about it. Go ahead.
It was September 29th, 1954. It was Game 1 of the World Series. And my dad, who was in the printing business, and he took me to games starting in 1951. He was in the printing business, but had season tickets. He had tickets for Sundays, holidays, opening day, and night games. And so this was for customers. He was in the business, and he would give them the customers, and we would go to about 20, 25 games a year. Starting from 51. Well, he took me to the first game of the 1954 World Series, and his seats were 8 rows behind the visiting dugout, in this case, the Cleveland Indians dugout. And it was the first game of the Yankees, of course, had dominated. It was the first time after they won 5 straight world titles that they weren't in it. So here we are sitting there, and I got to tell you a couple of things here. First of all, he says, look at that guy that's Connie Mack. And Tallulah Bankhead is a great actress. And there's Roy Cohn, because this was in the middle of the Army McCarthy hearing. So I'm seeing all these celebrities, including Casey Stengel. And now a photographer comes in front of both of us and starts taking pictures of me just before the game starts. And my dad says, we can't understand this. And he looks behind me and he says, Ricky, he called me Ricky, and that's what I was known as a kid. He says, turn around. I said, yeah. He says, do you recognize that man behind you? I said, no, I don't, Dad. He says, that's General Douglas MacArthur.
Wow!
And
Wow!
son, he thinks that your son, the photographer, were taking a picture of me with MacArthur behind me, and my dad was to my right. It was great. Anyway, Mays, is out there, and Vic Wirtz is coming up. Don Little, the left-hander who came over from the Milwaukee Braves with Antonelli in that deal, is on the mound. Little guy, little left-hander, and so DeRocher wanted the southpaw to pitch against the left-handed hitting Wirtz, and Wirtz hits the drive to center field, and my dad says, get on the seat quickly, stand up. And I stood on the seat, and I saw the catch made, and I saw, more important, as you know, the catch was great. He just ran, his 483 feet to center field, spun around, made the throw back to the infield, and the one runner went to third, the other runner held it first. And it was a great thrill.
Did people walking through center field that day at the Porter Grounds, did they know they watched something historic with that great catch, or was it a little later on where you realized how much that catch meant to the game?
A great question, Chris. You never know at the moment. People seem to think you say, oh, this is going to go down in history. You didn't know. You said it was a catch that may have, kept the Giants in the game because it was a tie score at the time.
Yeah,
and so, because it was replayed so many times on film, and we've seen the still picture of it, it's almost like Fisk's home run, because Fisk's home run was a great home run. It sent the World Series into the seventh game. But because of the body language of Fisk at the plate and Harry Coyle's great shot from the scoreboard in left field at Fenway Park, it became iconic. And a lot of these things become iconic after the fact, not necessarily right at that split second.
Tell me about INS. So you worked at INS right after you left Syracuse? That was the deal in the mid-'60s?
Yes. I was a copy boy when they went all news at WINS. And then my first on-air work was at KYW in Philadelphia, which followed WINS as an all-news. It was a Group W station, where a lot of the stations I worked at, and I did the all-night radio news, 6 nights a week. And I know that when I talked to a lot of kids that wanted to get into broadcasting later on when I was in Boston, I said, how would you like to begin at an all-night radio news thing and get like $200 a week? I would never do a thing like that, 6 nights a week. Well, I did.
And you paid the price, but look how well you did. So that was, where was your first break with it? I know you did the Red Sox, and I loved you in '75. Where was your first break doing a sports team? Was it with the Red Sox for WSB in Boston? When was that it?
Actually, Chris, it was with the Boston Celtics, because WBZ, where I went to Pittsburgh after Philadelphia, and I worked in Pittsburgh, and the Rooney family was great to me, and I did the Steelers preseason games, and they were the ones who recommended me to CBS, and that was my first opportunity working at a network, and so I started doing pre- and post-game shows. This was long before, the NFL Today, and not long, but several years before, and we did pre- and post-game shows from the stadiums after games, and so nationally, that's what I did. And then I did Boston Celtics locally, but as far as play-by-play concerned, it was the Celtics before the Red Sox. But CBS, I had a chance to do pre- and post-game shows on NFL broadcasts with them.
So you were with the Celtics locally with the Callens Havlicek team, Dick, or was it before that with Russell?
Yes. No, it was with Dave Callens, and it was when they had their revival, JoJo White, John Chaney, and that team. And, and Tommy Heinsohn was the head coach of the team. And it was, about 73 was when that happened. And so I did a couple of years of the Celtics locally, about 20 games a year we did before the break happened with the Red Sox when I was doing the Red Sox for the UHF station in Boston.
Did you do the Red Sox with Hawk Harrelson those first couple years, or was it Bob Montgomery? Who was it with?
No, it was actually Montgomery was the backup to fifth as the catcher, but it was with Hawk Harrelson, and it was a great start. Being teamed with Hawk, it was his first time as a broadcaster and my first time doing baseball on the air. And we had a couple of rocky starts in preseason and exhibition, but we got it together opening day, and we were in good shape from there.
Well, think about it too, Dick. I mean, you're doing the 75 Red Sox. That was a magical team. I mean, they got Rice as a rookie, Fred Lynn as a rookie. They won the pennant by 1 million games. They were great. They went to Yankee. They went to Shea Stadium and swept the Yankees in a 4-game series in late July. Never forget it. I was in Martha's Vineyard watching all those games. I mean, they were that was a hell of a year. What a great team to have a chance to do 140 games with, the 75 Red Sox. That's a magical team in Boston. And then they got them to beat the A's, and you did the World Series. That's a hell of a year in 1975 for Dick Stockton.
And the interesting thing, Chris, that was the year the Yankees were favored to win because they acquired Catfish Hunter. In the infancy of free agency.
Right.
And the Yankees got Catfish Hunter, and they were supposed to win this pennant without any problem, even though they were playing at Shea Stadium, as you know, because Yankee Stadium was being refurbished. But the Red Sox, had this magical beginning, and since you followed them in Martha's Vineyard, one of the great early games was before the Red Sox went in June to Yankee Stadium to face the Yankees. They were playing in Detroit, and Fred Lynn drove in 10 runs in one game.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I sure do. Yes, I do. 10 RBIs. Then he made a great catch out in Bloomington in straightaway center field to rob the Twins. That may have been an NBC game of the week, but I remember that great catch. He had an incredible rookie year. I mean, the bottom line is, he had an incredible. Now, you left the Red Sox, Dick. I mean, that's a great team, and you left. Did you go right to CBS from there? Where'd you go?
I went to CBS. I left in 1978. My last year was in '78, and when the season ended, I went. My last game that I did was that Bucky Dent game, was the playoff game, and when that game was over, the next day I joined CBS and started, which was interesting because I signed a deal with CBS as the host of the CBS Sports Spectacular, which I can say with extreme confidence was neither sports nor spectacular. It was the stepchild of Wide World of Sports on ABC, and Eddie Einhorn, who later became the partner with Jerry Reinsdorf with the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago White Sox, was my executive producer, and I was the host. So I did very few NBA or NFL games at the time, but I was the host of the Sports Spectacular, and we had some great events, Chris, that I'm sure rank with some of the greatest you've seen. The World Team Gymnastics Championships, you saw that, I know. You saw World Team Surfing in Honolulu. You saw Mr. Olympia, World Bodybuilding Championships. Just some of the many great events we had on the CBS Sports Spectacular.
Maybe not the most fun thing to cover, but you're doing network sports, and eventually if you're doing network sports, you're going to get some games to do that everybody gets a chance to watch, and you get a chance to be Mike side. And obviously those Celtic Lakers series, I know Brent did a few of them early, but you and Brent were sort of 1 and 1A. But I've been watching a lot of the old games, and I noticed in the Georgetown Villanova game, you were the host. Brent did the play-by-play with Billy, and in the Celtics runs in 84, 85, 86, Brent was the host, and you were the play-by-play. And I have Brent on here all the time. I have Brent on here all the time. So the combination of you and Brent, CBS had a ton of sports. You had such a smorgasbord, Dick, of doing any big game you wanted to do. in that period there tonight. You and Heinsohn, the Celtics, all these great teams. You may have even done the Islander game when Nystrom scored the goal. I think for some reason I remember you behind the microphone with that too. Anyway, you did a million events there in the 80s with CBS. You and Brett did the college basketball and the NBA. How about that for a second?
Well, it was great, and Brent was, when I got to CBS in 1978, he was the host of the CBS of the NFL Today, and did many of the great events. And it was interesting. Last year with Fox, I had a chance to go to London for the first time to do a game between the Raiders and the Chicago Bears, and I saw Brent. I was reunited with Brent. I got a picture of him with out at practice before that game, out in Watford, where they had a country club where the Raiders stayed. So Brett and I talked about old times just last year.
How about doing all those Lakers Celtics? They really the redawn of the NBA in the early 80s with, I know you're close to Pat Riley, with the great Lakers and the great Celtics. You and Tommy doing all those games for a period of time. Then later with the Pistons. That was a gigantic time in the NBA, and you obviously were part of Jordan too early. I mean, you really saw a lot of tremendous basketball in the NBA there in the 80s, Nick. How about that for a sec? Let me hear it.
I was blessed, and there was no question about it. And the best series that I ever covered was actually not one of those finals, but was when the Celtics played the 76ers in 1981. And I wasn't doing the finals then. And we were assigned, it was Kevin Lockery and I, assigned to the Celtics and the 76ers, and our number one team, and I think it was Gary Bender, Rick Barry, and Bill Russell were assigned to the Houston Rockets and the Kansas City Omaha Kings. Don't ask me why, but we got that series, which was the revival of that Boston-Philadelphia rivalry, which of course had Chamberlain and Russell from years before, and that was the greatest series I ever covered. It was a 7-game series. I think about 5 of the 7 had to be decided by 4 points or fewer, and the Celtics won Game 7 by 2 points. Larry Bird might have hit the winning shot
yes,
in
he
Game
did.
7, and that was the best series that I ever covered for CBS.
A lot of people used to get on Heinsohn because he's a big Celtic guy for being, I know the Laker fans used to hate that. That was not the case, right? Tommy was first of all, he's a great guy. He's still with us. But Heinsohn played that as down the middle as he possibly could, right, Dick, in the 80s?
He did the best he could, Chris. Let me put it that way. He did the best he could because, you know what, he was trained to be, when officials' calls came, I think there were very few, and I love you, believe me, Tommy Heinsohn, and you pointed out, and he is still with us, which is great, one of the greatest and I think nationally underrated analysts in the history of basketball. I mean, this guy knew the game inside and out and was able to explain it inside and out, was part of that, Red Auerbach Celtic era when he was a player, and then coached into a world championship. But, when he did the local Celtic games, I don't think any call ever, went for the Boston Celtics. Okay?
I agree.
And that's the way he was. But he was so great. And all the partners I had, I started with Russell for a couple of years. We did 9 years. I did 4 years with Tommy Heinsohn and 1 year with Billy Cunningham. And I finished with Hubie Brown, who's still going in his 80s, with the 2 years with the Detroit Pistons. And I'll never forget Billy Cunningham and I, we had, I had a great relationship with all of them. But he called me to tell me, he said, Dick, I'm sorry I only have to have 1 year with you. I'm going to become a part owner with the Miami Heat. And I said, Billy, if you want to leave me for $30 million, go ahead. That's your choice.
I was watching the Philadelphia Lakers series last week, Game 1 in 82-83, and Dick is right. He did it, of course. Lakers, Philly won that game 113-107. Game 1, that great Philly team, and Bill Russell was Dick's color guy in that particular game. How about football, Dick? When was your first big? Did you start doing games on CBS in the NFL right away in 1980, or was it a little later with the National Football League? How about that?
82, Chris, was my first year, and Roger Staubach was my partner. And so I had tremendous, partners, Hank Stram, John Madden for a couple of games even during the stretch. Dan Fouts, broke Dan Fouts in. Wayne Walker, a great guy. We did a lot of the 49ers games, not the big games, which Pat John did, but we did most of the 49ers schedule then because Wayne was a local sportscaster hero in San Francisco, and I did many of those games, and I mentioned Dan Fouts as well, and all of them. And then, of course, I went to Fox and I worked with Millen for about 7, 8, 9 years when I joined Fox when CBS lost the contract in 1994, starting with them. But I was with CBS that I started doing my NFL time.
You know, it's amazing, Dick, too. They've always given you the rookie to break in, even now, even today, after all these years. You make it easy for the rookie, and that's a good compliment because the Fox, CBS, they always have given you that person who's getting his feet wet. And so they use you to break that person, and that's a nice compliment. How about that for a sec? Go ahead.
Well, it is, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and thank you, Chris. But I have really broken in all of the analysts on Fox. At one time or another, Troy Aikman, Darryl Johnston, Rondé Barber. I didn't really break in Chris Fielding because he had a lot of years at ESPN and was very good. And lately it's been Mark Schlereth, who has been a broadcaster for a long time, but had never really done play-by-play until we started working. So I've had 3 years with him, but I really enjoy it because, number one, I think the analyst is the key man on any broadcast, and it's not the play-by-play man, at least on television, where you have, the replays and the pictures and all that. That's where the personality comes from. So I've been able to say, look, this is your game, and I'll really pave the way for you, and I really enjoyed breaking guys in. And Charles Davis as well, who we have lost to CBS. He's going to CBS as their number 2 broadcaster. But Charles never did NFL. He had done college football, not NFL, till we worked together. And a wonderful guy. I have really enjoyed and really love all the guys that I've worked with.
It's funny too, Dick. You're underrated historically. Everybody talks Gowdy, Enberg, certainly Summerall. You've lasted longer than all of them. But when you talk all-time greats, now we all know that you're an all-time great, but the average fan's going to think Enberg, Gowdy, NBC, Al Michaels. He's going to think, Buck is going to get there eventually. Obviously, he's going to think Pat and John. And you almost forget, guys, say what you want. This man's been broadcasting sports for 45 years. And I don't think that bothers you. You just, hey, give me the games and I'll do the games. But when you think about it on the national level, from a historical standpoint, I think you're a little underrated. How about that for a sec? Let me hear.
Well, that's kind. I don't worry about that stuff. I really don't care about accolades. And I know, Chris, and I've heard from other people, friends, that you have felt that way about my work over the years, and I am grateful for that. I want you to know that. But I have never been one to say, where's my award or my accolade, or where do I stand among the greats. I know what I have done, and I appreciate what I've been able to contribute, to the broadcasting business. And I think people like yourself and fans and viewers out there who feel that way, that's good enough for me, to be honest with you. So, underrated, overrated, or what have you, and everyone is very subjective. People have their opinions. I am so blessed to have had the career I've had, and I'm not done yet. Although I'm not going to go, forever. I don't have any target date. When I feel that, I can do this for 10 more years, but I don't need to do it for 10 more years. I have a life. I always say to people, broadcasting is what I do. It's not who I am. And that's, an honest appraisal of myself. And so, I have really done great things. And when I watch The Last Dance and I see games that I broadcast, I smile. And yes, I have been there. I've worked with great people. I have covered great people. Being on with you today is an honor for me to be able to talk about it and bring up stories that are apart from the event. You asked me about Willie Mays' catch in the 54 World Series, and I told you about Douglas MacArthur. These are anecdotes and stories that I love to tell, and being on with you gives me that opportunity.
Dick Stockton, of course, we'll let him go here in a minute. We have that call. We want him to hear that call of the Reds. We'll play that too. How about a couple of people who have just passed? Did you know Whitaker? Did you have a good relationship with Jack Whitaker? Give me a couple seconds on him. Go ahead.
A wonderful, wonderful wordsmith. Jack Whitaker is I guess, the true. They talk about journalists in this business. Was there anyone better than Jack Whitaker as an electronic journalist in our business? I say no. Jack Whitaker.
That's one. All right. How about a guy? How about Joe? How about Jack Buck? Did you know Jack Buck well?
Jack Buck I knew very well. I worked with him many, many times when I was doing post-game shows. I knew when Joe took the airways, and Joe, I don't know how old Joe is now. Is he 25 yet? Anyway, Joe Buck was the best young play-by-play, best show broadcaster I ever heard. When he came on, he was so well trained, and it's interesting that the sons of all these broadcasters, Kenny Albert, who is the son of Marv, and Tom Brenneman, the son of Marty, and Kevin Harlan, who has, father was the, Green Bay Packers executive, and all of these people who have had sons, that they work so hard. It's not like, well, I'm the son of Jack Buck, so I'm just going to sail through. No, they work hard. Tom Brenneman, Kenny Albert, they work as hard, if not harder, than their fathers did. I know this.
Is there any arena or stadium that somehow you'd love to do a game from and you haven't?
No, but I have, I don't have any regrets in my business. I wish I had done more hockey. I only did 2 hockey games when Fox had the contract. I worked with Mike Eruzione. It was because of contract. I loved hockey growing up. As a matter of fact, I loved hockey as much, if not more, than basketball as a youth growing up, pro basketball. And so I wish I had done more hockey. And if you were to say to me, if I'm going to put you in a place right now to do a game, it would be doing a Maple Leafs game at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto.
Wow,
I'd love to do that.
Wow, how about that? All right, here is the play-by-play of the home run by Fisk. Dick, I want you to hear it, then we'll come back and you can analyze and then we'll let you go. This is Game 6. This is, of course, in the 12th inning. 6-6. Red Sox down 3 games to 2. Dick's on the call. Listen up. Go ahead. World Series. Carlton Fisk becomes the first player in the series to hit one over the wall into the net. Red Sox win it 7-6 in 12 innings. And Carlton Fisk had a lot of little boy in him right there, Joe. He took one step, knew it was going to be close, he knew it was gone, and it was dancing in the streets all the way around. Johnny Pesky meets him. 2 things to that, Dick. Number one, the amount of time you let slip before you talked again, very much like Scully in '88 with Gibson. You said nothing for about 20 seconds. And number two, you sound the same. You have not lost that enthusiastic voice. I mean, this is 50 years ago. This is, was it 45 years ago. So you sound the same. Anybody could make that Stick Stockton. You haven't changed with the voice. And you let the game breathe a little bit. A couple seconds on that before you go. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. It's easy to call home runs that are headed out deep to left field. Back he goes, looking up, it could be, it's gone. Those are the rhapsodic home runs that we hear. But this was a shot down the line, Chris, that could go either way. It was a split second. I just want you to know one thing. If I had said the ball is foul and it's a home run, you wouldn't be talking to me today. And if I said the ball's a home run and it was foul, you wouldn't be talking to me today.
You're right. You had to wait until that call was made. 100%. You had to get that definitively correct and not jump the call, jump the play. You had to let the play conclude. You still
Right.
love it, Dick. You're still. You mentioned it here. You're going to be here a long time. You still want to do this. Sports keeps you young. I get that impression. Is that the case?
Yes, it does. And again, I'll do it as long as I want to do it. And when the time comes, I have a great home life. I have a great wife who's from Arizona. Her father was the mayor of Scottsdale. Jamie Drinkwater was her name. And we travel around the world. We play tennis and golf. We have a great time together. I am really blessed and having a great life now. And as long as I feel that I want to do it, I'll do it. And when I don't, I'll be fine.
Jones. And here's a guy who knew Tommy better than anybody. He's a good friend of the channel, does a hell of a job. And he's Dick Stockton, his broadcast partner for a lot of those tremendous Celtic Laker runs. And Dick, nice enough to give us a couple minutes here today on a sad day in the world of sports. Dick, good to talk again. Christopher Russo, how are you, okay?
Chris, it's always great to talk to you, but I got a little sidebar before we start talking about Tommy. Is that I just played 9 holes with a great fan of yours his name is Rob Stearns, and he's the father of David Stearns, who you have interviewed before in your show.
Wow.
The manager of the Brewers, and he's always been a great fan of yours, as I have been. And so I just wanted to throw that in before we get to the subject of the day.
Well, David Stearns lived in Queens, so Rob would he'd be on top of it. I do get Dave on, the general manager of the Brewers. Maybe he gets the Mets job.
Yeah.
Who knows? First off, you, Dick, let's talk about your busy schedule. You've stayed healthy. You've had to travel. Have you had any fear here about getting on the road and doing these games? Let me get a little sense on that from you personally first. Go ahead.
No, I actually, thank you for asking that. I've not had any fear at all, and I've been tested. In fact, I have done 2 games that I wasn't supposed to do, that I was going to be off because I don't work every week. I do about 9 games or so, which is what I want to do here. And because of problems, people not clearing, I've been called in at the 11th hour for 2 games to do, including last week when I did the Titans and the Bears. So I'm sorry that certain guys have had some problems, but I've been delighted to fill in, and I feel very good, to be honest with you.
So when you go, you have to get tested real quick. How do you do that if they call you on a Thursday to get to Nashville for the Bear Titan game? How does that work for you?
Well, we have a system of testing, and they get it done, and they get it done very efficiently, and they also have we have people on hand on site who will do it. In addition to that, if you need to be tested again, and so it works out pretty well, and that's just part of the game. Just part of the game.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, Tommy. I did a lot with him today as a player with the Jones and the Bob Ryan spot. You knew him better than anybody because you worked with him closely for a long period of time. Always just he's such a fun guy. He must have been a great guy to travel with. He's got that big, rough personality, and sit at a bar and play the piano all night. Must have been a lot of fun in the '80s there, Dick, with Tommy. Thoughts there for a sec. Go ahead.
He was one of the sweetest guys and the gentlest people that I've known in the world of sports. He was gruff. Yeah, that voice. They got to push it up. I mean, that was his mantra every time he played. We had any game, he would always ask the coach, "How come you're not pushing the ball up enough?" Because that was his whole idea of successful basketball, and that's what he would judge coaches and teams' performance on whether they push the ball up the court and force the play. And so that was his thing.
the Celtic fan will get annoyed that he's leaning too much the Laker way during those finals. Dick, how about that for a second? Let me hear.
Well, you know why that was, and that's a great point. But the reason why that was because whenever we would do these games, and it's interesting that in the Lakers Celtic era in the '80s, the series were exciting, but one team would impose its will on the other. There were very few down to the wire games. I mean, we remember Magic Skyhook, and we remember certain kind of games, but basically one team would impose its will on the other. It would win by as many as 25 points or 18 points and would win the game. And then the next game would be the other way around. And so what we would do in our broadcast is that naturally the way the game was going, they would come to us and we'd say, you know, the Lakers are winning big. What do the Celtics need to do to get back in the game? Well, you know, LA could care less what the Celtics needed to do. They didn't want to hear that, and vice versa. So they always thought that we were, you know, favoring the other team, which was not the case.
Wow, Fernando. Wasn't there a broadcast once where he came out with a tie that had a purple and green tie to show you that it was 50-50? Wasn't there a broadcast once where you started the broadcast with Tommy's tie?
Yeah, it didn't help. Let me just tell you, it didn't help. People, you know, so this was a great story that you know I've never even told before. We would be in Los Angeles, and the Celtics would be playing the Lakers, and we get there on Friday, but Tommy would be doing a game Friday night at the Boston Garden. Well, up at the Forum Club in Los Angeles, which was the club above, you know, in Inglewood, as you know, the Forum where the Lakers played, and the fans would be watching the game and would be listening to Tommy do the game. And of course, Tommy was trained by Red Auerbach, so pro-Celtic that he would, he would chastise the referees whenever they made a call against Boston. And the fans up there would be beside themselves. And now it's Sunday. He would fly in to do the game, and we'd be sitting there at courtside. And I forget the guy's name who was the PA announcer in the Forum. He was an FM disc jockey, and he had a great low-key voice. And he would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Forum. Celtics and the Lakers today. Calling the game for the LA Lakers. Chick Hearn." And everyone would cheer, you know. And then they would announce Johnny Moses, and there would be no reaction. And calling the game on CBS today, Dick Stockton and Tommy Heinsohn. The booms would come down from the top, and Tommy would say, "Dick, why are they booing? Why are they booing?" And you know, could have been me, but I said, "Tommy," I said, "they all heard your broadcast. The Garden on Friday night."
Man, he was, and he used to get on the officials. Now I don't remember him doing it so much with you, Dick. Boy, oh boy, Tommy used to get on these officials left and right when he did the local broadcast all those years. Go ahead, let me hear.
The Celtics never got a good call. They never got a good call, you know. And but he was a delight, Chris, you know, to work with. And at 4 years, we had 4 years together, and he was always serious and intense about how the game should be played. I mean, that was the biggest thing that he discussed about. He hated when teams walked the ball up the court. Couldn't stand it. And I remember one time we were in a playoff situation. The Celtics were playing the Atlanta Hawks. Mike Fratello was coaching Atlanta, and we went to some high school, and that's where the game, you know, the game was the next day, and we went to a high school where the Hawks would practice. And Tommy went up to Mike Fratello, you know, and Tommy would tower over Mike, right? And he would say, "Mike, you're not pushing the ball up and up." Mike would say, I'm trying, Tommy. I'm trying to do it. "Well, you're not doing enough. You got to get the ball in Willis's hands." Willis has bad hands. He can't.
And I knew Tommy used to hate the Hubie Brown games, you know, the 86-82 games. Those are not the famous games. Tommy wanted to score 120 to 115, and Hubie used to walk the ball up the court. He used to call him the Prussian coach, and he used to call him the Prussian coach. He used to have a lot of problems with Hubie Brown. How about that for a second? Go ahead.
And Rick Pitino was the same way, you know, when he coached in the NBA, and Fratello was the same way. And they wanted to walk the ball up, and you know, that basketball doesn't go anymore. And Tommy just couldn't stand it. In fact, he once said to me, we were in the beginning of our broadcasting career together, we'd be in a restaurant, and he would take out a napkin. He says, "You know what the best fast break is? A 6-on-5.
about style, the offensive style. Give me now. You were in Boston doing the Red Sox when he won the 2 titles, Nick. I'm sure you love basketball. I'm sure you went to the games and you knew him somewhat. In the 70s when he won the 2 championships, the Phoenix series and the Bucks series, you probably got good recollections of, correct?
Well, yes, and he was a truly great coach, and I was fortunate because in my career, the first basketball that I did in Boston was with Bob Cousy at the Analyst, and then later on I would be working. Besides, I would be working besides the games on HBO, and I had Red Auerbach and Casey Jones. Okay.
Wow.
I had Red Auerbach and Casey Jones, and then later on I had Tommy and Bill Russell. So I had a lot of the guys that were on Boston Celtic. Were in the green. So I had
Who was his? Do you remember who he loved as a player? Did he love Bird? Did he love Magic? Did he love Will? Who did he love as a player? Who did he tell you? He loved Elijah Wan. What players did Tommy love? He ever tell you those things? Doing all those games?
He loved Havlicek. Havlicek was his man.
Oh, it was. I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Havlicek was to him the best of all time. So that's who he liked, and he respected all those other players and his teammates, and it was great. So he came from that fabric, the Boston Celtics, and it was a certain kind. They won 11 championships in 13 years, and and I know there were only 8 teams in the league at the time, but he was phenomenal as a great player out of Holy Cross, a tremendous competitor, and a great shooter, and a great coach and a great broadcaster. So how the triple crown of basketball life.
And I didn't realize he was such a great artist. Bob Ryan told me today he was a tremendous painter. Did you know that? I'm sure you knew that, right, Dick, in the 80s?
Yes, I did. Oh, I did. And he showed us paintings that he had done. And, so it was, he was a versatile guy. And he was a happy in his skin. He was happy in his skin. And, nothing but great respect for him. And I feel sad. He had a tremendous life. And, the interesting thing, too, is that he would eat the wrong foods. He would eat the worst foods in the world. He would have bacon and eggs for breakfast. He would have a cheeseburger and french fries for lunch. And he would have onion rings and steak for dinner. And people say, Tommy, you're not going to live long, eating like that. Well, look at the result.
And I thought he smoked like a fiend. So here's the guy that smoked like a fish. And he's eating all this crazy food, and he lived 86 years. We all could be so lucky. I think he lived 86 years of age.
I know. He had the genes and whatever he had. It was a pleasure.
Good, Dick. You did a wonderful job. Stay healthy. We'll catch you on the road here at these NFL games. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Dick Stockton on Tommy Heinsohn. How about a bacon egg, cheeseburger, and steak and onion rings? Wow, we got a little Tommy Heinsohn today. 6 years.